They should have fucking listened. The Galactic Council, filled with self-important bureaucrats from ancient alien races, thought they could control humanity's ascent. Trill Counselor Novak slammed her fist on the podium, her voice echoing through the chamber. We can no longer ignore the alarming rise of humanity. But her findings only met skepticism and accusations of naivete from an alien elite unwilling to accept that a lesser species could surpass them on merit alone. Undaunted, Novak journeyed to the lavish human colonies of New Terra and Elysium to see their society firsthand. What she found shocked her: a disturbing disparity between the opulent human elite and the alien laborers they exploited. As she burrowed deeper, Novak discovered an unexpected ally in Skora, a human corporate heir sickened by his own people's unquenchable thirst for wealth and power. Together, they would unravel a centuries-old conspiracy behind humanity's rise and reveal the terrifying reason we must all fear the humans. Novak's heart raced as she pored over the damning evidence in the dimly lit safe house. Classified genetic engineering reports, leaked communiques detailing strategic interventions in human affairs, financial records tracing vast sums funneled into clandestine projects. It all painted a sickening picture of the hidden hands guiding humanity's ascent. Skora rubbed his bloodshot eyes, the weight of their discovery heavy on his shoulders. This goes beyond anything I could have imagined, he muttered, his voice tinged with disbelief and disgust. My own people, reduced to puppets dancing on alien strings. Novak placed a reassuring hand on his arm. We'll make this right. We have to. Her drive hardened as she met his gaze. The Council needs to see this. They need to understand the threat we're facing. A sudden crash from the floor below jolted them to attention. The telltale thud of booted feet on stairs sent a chill down Novak's spine. They've found us, Skora hissed, his hand already reaching for his plasma pistol. Novak's mind raced as she hastily gathered the most critical files. They couldn't let this evidence be destroyed, not when the future of the stars hung in the balance. The rooftop, she whispered urgently. It's our only chance. They burst onto the roof just as the first shots rang out, searing the air where they'd stood moments before. Skora returned fire, his aim true as he dropped two of their pursuers with well-placed shots. Novak's heart pounded as she scanned the skyline, desperate for an escape route. They hit the drone hard, clinging to its frame as it wobbled under their sudden weight. Novak's fingers flew across its control panel, overriding its programming and sending it surging into the night sky. As the safe house receded below them, the true scope of their mission crystallized in her mind. Their momentary respite was shattered by the shrill wail of police sirens. Novak cursed under her breath as a fleet of sleek black pursuit craft emerged from the shadows, their searchlights cutting through the darkness. They're not giving up easily, Skora growled, his grip tightening on his pistol. Novak wrenched the drone into a sharp dive, weaving between the spires and scaffolding of the lower city. The pursuers matched her move for move, their craft far more maneuverable than the lumbering maintenance drone. Plasma bolts sizzled past, scorching the drone's hull and filling the air with the acrid stench of melted metal. Skora leaned out, his shots finding their mark as one of the police craft erupted into a ball of flames. But there were too many, their numbers seemingly endless. Novak knew they couldn't outrun them forever. They needed a plan, and fast. Novak didn't hesitate, rolling the drone and plunging into the gaping maw of the freighter's cargo hold. The cavernous space swallowed them, the drone's lights barely penetrating the gloom as they wove between towering stacks of crates and rusting machinery. Shouts and the pounding of boots echoed through the hold as their pursuers gave chase on foot. Novak set the drone down behind a wall of containers, her heart pounding as she and Skora crept into the maze-like corridors of the ship. We have to get this to the Council, Novak whispered, her voice tight with urgency. They need to know the truth. The thought sent a chill down Novak's spine. The possibility of traitors within the Council itself had been unthinkable, yet not nearly as far-fetched as she wished it could be. They were on their own, fugitives with the keys to expose an unimaginable betrayal. As if in answer to her darkening thoughts, a hail of plasma fire erupted around them, the air sizzling with the heat of near misses. Novak and Skora dove for cover, returning fire as they retreated deeper into the ship. They emerged into a cavernous reactor chamber, the thrum of ancient generators filling the space. Novak spotted a narrow catwalk spanning the chamber, offering a potential escape route. With silent acknowledgement, they made their break. Plasma bolts stitched the air around them as they sprinted across the walkway, the metal grating shuddering beneath their feet. Novak's lungs burned, her muscles screaming with each pounding step. They were almost there. Almost. A searing pain lanced through her shoulder, sending her stumbling. Skora caught her, dragging her through the hatchway on the far side. He slammed the door shut, fusing the lock with a well-placed shot, as shouts and pounding fists echoed from the other side. Novak gritted her teeth against the pain, her hand coming away slick with blood as she pressed it against the wound. Skora's face was a mask of concern as he helped her to her feet. "We've got to keep moving." As they emerged into the cool night air, onto a small landing pad filled with courier shuttles, Novak knew their fight was just beginning. The Cabal's plan was already in motion, the seeds of chaos sown on 100 worlds. They had to get the proof to the rest of the galaxy, to rally the opposition and prevent the unthinkable. "For too long we've been puppets dancing on alien strings," he declared, his fist clenched at his sides. "No more. Humanity will forge its own path among the stars." The chamber erupted in a cacophony of shouts and applause. Outside, crowds gathered in the streets, their faces a mix of anger and grit as the full scope of the conspiracy unfolded on massive holoscreens. Across human space, the powder keg ignited. On New Terra, the gleaming jewel of human expansion, plasma bolts lit up the night sky as citizens clashed with the alien-backed security forces. Governor Xanthor, a hulking Centaurian, barked orders from his fortified bunker. "Crush this insurgency," he growled, mandibles clicking in agitation. "By any means necessary." Armored hover tanks rolled through the streets, their cannons trained on the surging crowds. But for every protester cut down, 2 more seemed to take their place, armed with makeshift weapons and a burning desire for freedom. In orbit, Novak's stolen cruiser emerged from hyperspace, alarms blaring as enemy ships closed in. Reza's hands danced across the control panel, coaxing impossible maneuvers from the alien vessel. "Hold on to something," he shouted as the ship corkscrewed between volleys of plasma fire. Novak gripped the command chair, her eyes fixed on the swirling battle. "We need to get to the surface," she said through gritted teeth. "The rebellion needs leadership." A crackling transmission cut through the chaos. Skora's face appeared on the main view screen, haggard but determined. "Novak, we've got a chance to end this. Sinclair's rallying support on Earth, but we need you here on New Terra." "Understood," Novak replied, her mind already racing with possibilities. "We're coming in hot. Have your people ready." Novak nodded grimly. "Then we strike now before they can consolidate their forces." As they formulated their plan, a new face joined their circle, Liara, the infamous hacker whose exploits were whispered about in the darkest corners of the datasphere. Her fingers flew across a hollow keyboard, weaving digital magic. "I've cracked their comm encryption," she announced, a fierce grin on her face. "We can coordinate the entire resistance network." The pieces fell into place. Novak would lead the ground assault on the governor's palace, while Sinclair rallied the orbital defenses. Skora and Liara would coordinate from the command center, feeding intel to resistance cells across the planet. As dawn broke over New Terra's capital, the rebellion surged forward. Novak led from the front, her plasma rifle spitting death as they fought their way through the streets. Citizens joined the push, arming themselves with captured weapons and turning the tide against their oppressors. In orbit, Sinclair's voice crackled over the comms. "Cabal reinforcements incoming. We'll hold them off as long as we can." The sky lit up with the fury of ship-to-ship combat, debris raining down like hellish meteors. On the ground, Novak's team breached the outer defenses of the governor's palace, only to find themselves caught in a vicious crossfire. "Push forward," Novak shouted, ducking behind a shattered column as plasma bolts sizzled past. "We end this now." Novak raised her rifle, her voice cold as space itself. Not for much longer. A furious battle erupted, the air thick with plasma fire and the screams of the wounded. Novak's team fought with the desperation of those who knew the fate of worlds hung in the balance. Cheers erupted across all channels. In the command center, Skora and Liara exchanged victorious grins. But their celebration was short-lived as a priority alert flashed across their screens. "Novak," Skora's voice was urgent. "We've traced the Cabal's command signals. We've found their central base, but you're not going to like where it is." Novak's eyes narrowed as she studied the coordinates. A chill ran down her spine as she realized the true scope of the challenge that lay ahead. "Assemble the team," she ordered, her commitment hardening. "It's time to strike at the heart of the conspiracy." The coordinates flashed on the screen, revealing a location deep within the heart of Centaurian space. Novak's mind focused as she realized the true nature of their enemy. Not just a cabal of corrupt aliens, but a cancer that had spread throughout the highest echelons of galactic society. As New Terra celebrated its hard-won freedom, the real war was just beginning. Across human space, world after world rose up against their alien overlords. The spark of rebellion ignited into a raging inferno, consuming entire star systems in its wake. Admiral Caleb Stryker stood on the bridge of the HSS Defiant, his piercing gaze fixed on the holographic display of the galaxy. Red icons representing loyalist forces vastly outnumbered the green of human-controlled systems. "Sir, we're receiving reports of another colony declaring independence," Lieutenant Reyes announced, her voice tight with excitement. "New Avalon has joined the cause." Stryker nodded, a ghost of a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Excellent. Have Captain Chen deploy the Third Fleet to secure their orbital defenses." The newly formed Human Defense Fleet was a ragtag collection of retrofitted civilian ships and captured alien vessels. But what they lacked in firepower, they made up for in purpose and ingenuity. Stryker's tactical brilliance shone as he orchestrated a series of lightning raids against enemy supply lines. The Defiant's stealth systems, reverse-engineered from captured Centaurian technology, allowed them to strike with impunity. On Zarthos Prime, the alien capital world, chaos reigned. Counselor Zakar paced in his opulent chambers, mandibles clicking nervously as he received reports of yet another human victory. "Uncle, we must do something." Javi, his niece and heir to the vast Zarthosian trade empire, hissed. "These humans grow bolder by the day." Before Zakar could respond, the chamber doors exploded inward. Human commandos poured through the breach, their plasma rifles trained on the stunned aliens. "Counselor Zakar," a cool voice rang out. Novak stepped forward, her face set in stubborn persistence. "You're coming with us." Meanwhile, Javi seethed in her cell, her amber eyes burning with hatred. "You'll pay for this, humans," she spat as Navarch Ethan Bishop approached. "The entire might of the Centaurian Empire will crush your pathetic rebellion." The Korlath Nebula loomed before them, a swirling maelstrom of cosmic dust and newborn stars. Hidden within its depths lay the loyalist Seventh Fleet, poised to launch a crushing counteroffensive against human-held worlds. A lance of pure energy erupted from the Defiant's prow, cutting through the nebula like a scythe through wheat. Loyalist ships disintegrated in its wake, reduced to their component atoms in the blink of an eye. "Sir, we've intercepted communiques about an elite strike force," the agent reported, his voice crackling with static. "They're en route to New Terra. ETA, 72 hours. Stryker's mind raced, formulating strategies and discarding them just as quickly. They needed an edge, something the enemy wouldn't expect. Armed with Javi's unwitting betrayal, Stryker laid a trap for the incoming strike force. As the alien ships dropped out of hyperspace, they found themselves caught in a devastating crossfire. But even as humanity celebrated this latest victory, Novak knew the key to lasting peace lay not in military might, but in understanding. She approached Stryker with a radical proposal. "Admiral, we need to prove our worth to the galactic community," she argued, her eyes blazing with conviction. "Not as conquerors, but as equals. There's an ancient archive on Aldebaran IV that holds the key to our true origins." Stryker raised an eyebrow. "You're talking about the uplift theory? That's just a myth, Novak." Stryker considered for a long moment, then nodded. "Assemble your team, but be warned, Aldebaran IV is deep in enemy territory. You'll be on your own out there." The Defiant dropped out of hyperspace above Ferroc, the planet's rust-colored surface marred by the scars of orbital bombardment. Admiral Stryker's lips pursed as he surveyed the tactical display. "Status report," he barked. Lieutenant Reyes's fingers flew across her console. "Sir, we're detecting a massive energy signature in high orbit. It's unlike anything we've ever seen." "Incoming transmission," Reyes announced, her voice tight. A familiar face materialized on the main view screen. Javi, her amber eyes burning with fanatical intensity, sneered at Stryker. "Behold the might of the Purity Front, human," she spat. "Your tainted alliance ends here." The transmission cut off abruptly as a blinding lance of energy erupted from the battle station. It sliced through 3 of Stryker's frigates, vaporizing them instantly. "Evasive maneuvers!" Stryker roared. The Defiant banked hard, narrowly avoiding another plasma barrage. In the chaos of the battle, Stryker's mind raced. He keyed his personal comm, connecting to a secure channel. "Bishop, it's time to cash in on that intel you squeezed out of our friend." Navarch Ethan Bishop's roguish grin filled the small hollow projector. "I was wondering when you'd ask, Admiral. Transmitting the data now." As the fleet desperately held the line against the Purity Front's onslaught, Stryker pored over the stolen schematics. A plan began to form. "Commander Thrace," he called out, "assemble Zero Squadron. I've got a suicide mission with your name on it." Hours later, a stealth dropship detached from the Defiant's ventral bay. Inside, Commander Zara Thrace checked her team's equipment one final time. The dropship's stealth systems held as they approached the Titanic battle station. A brief flicker in the energy field, a vulnerability Bishop's intel had revealed, and they were through. Zero Squadron hit the deck running, plasma rifles at the ready. They encountered no resistance in the initial corridors. The station's crew, cocky in their perceived invulnerability, had grown lax. Their luck didn't hold. As they approached the shield generator, alarms blared. Thrace cursed under her breath as the first wave of security drones rounded the corner. "Keep moving," she shouted over the din of weapons fire. "Kira, Jasper, hold them off." The 2 rearguard soldiers nodded grimly, taking up defensive positions as the rest of the team pressed on. "Stryker, you're clear!" Thrace yelled into her comm as plasma bolts sizzled past her head. "Light 'em up!" The Defiant's main guns, powered by the experimental fusion lance, unleashed their fury. The battle station shuddered under the concentrated barrage, massive hull breaches venting atmosphere and crew into the void. In the confusion, Bishop led his fighter wing in a daring assault on the command deck. They cut through the station's defenses with surgical precision, capitalizing on the chaos. Bishop himself kicked down the door to the command center, his eyes locking with Javi's. For a moment, neither moved. Then Javi lunged for the environmental controls. "If I die," she snarled, "I'm taking you all with me." Bishop's reflexes, honed by years of combat, saved them all. His stun bolt caught Javi mid-motion, dropping her to the deck. As the dust settled and Ferroc's liberation began, Stryker allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. But the intercepted Purity Front communiques troubled him deeply. Someone high up in the ranks was funneling advanced tech to these splinter groups. "I'm initiating Operation Shadow Hunt," Stryker announced, his voice grave. "We have a mole, and it's someone we all respect. I'm dividing you into separate teams, each investigating one suspect. Trust no one outside your cell." The frigid winds of Caldra howled across the barren landscape as Admiral Stryker's shuttle touched down on the uncharted moon's surface. A camouflaged hangar bay yawned open, swallowing the vessel whole. "One of these individuals is likely working with the entity known as Exile," Stryker continued. "Our mission is to root out this traitor before they can do irreparable harm to our alliance." He divided his inner circle into 3 teams, each tasked with investigating one suspect. Commander Zara Thrace's eyes narrowed as she received her assignment. Prefect Marcus Sinclair. "With all due respect, sir," Thrace said, "Sinclair's a decorated officer. His rise through the ranks is precisely why we need to scrutinize him." Stryker cut her off. "Leave no stone unturned, Commander." As the teams dispersed, Ethan Bishop cornered Stryker. "Admiral, you're taking point on Elysia yourself." Stryker nodded. "I need someone I can trust absolutely on this, Ethan. The diplomat's connections run deep." Weeks passed. The base on Caldra hummed with activity as intelligence reports flooded in. Each team pursued their target with laser focus, but the elusive exile remained a shadow just beyond their grasp. The sting operation went sideways fast. Plasma fire erupted from concealed positions as Thrace's team breached the warehouse. Through the chaos, she caught a glimpse of a hooded figure slipping away. "Jenkins, on me!" she barked, giving chase. But as they rounded the corner, a bolt of energy caught Jenkins square in the chest. He crumpled, dead before he hit the ground. Thrace's blood ran cold. Someone had compromised their op. "Tenzev's been playing you all for fools," Javi purred, her amber eyes gleaming. "How else could a mere soldier rise so quickly through your ranks?" Bishop pounded his fist on the table. "Enough games! Give me something I can use or I'll—" An explosion rocked the base. Alarms blared as Bishop sprinted from the interrogation room. He found chaos in the corridors. Javi had escaped, freed by one of Thrace's own pilots who'd bought into her lies. As security forces battled to contain the uprising, Stryker himself fell victim to a hidden enemy. The Admiral collapsed during a briefing, frothing at the mouth. "Poison," the medtech declared grimly as they rushed Stryker to the infirmary. Bishop's fist slammed against the bulkhead of his command shuttle. "Damn it, Drake!" he snarled into the comm. "Fall back and maintain position." But it was too late. The young pilot's fighter streaked across the asteroid's pockmarked surface. Sensors locked onto the heat signature of Vigil's approaching transport. Bishop watched in dismay as the carefully laid trap unraveled. "All units, engage!" Bishop barked, strapping himself into the pilot's seat. His fingers danced across the controls, bringing the shuttle's engines online. He shot from the hangar bay, G-forces pressing him back as he gave chase. The transport weaved through the asteroid field, its pilot demonstrating preternatural skill. Bishop gritted his teeth, matching the ship's every move. They emerged from the belt's inner ring, the transport now making a beeline for open space. "Oh, no you don't," Bishop muttered. He fired a precision burst from his forward cannons, clipping the transport's engine housing. The ship lurched, venting plasma as it tumbled end over end. Karek Tenzev stood before him, hands raised in surrender. The decorated war hero's face was a mask of grim resignation. Tenzev's shoulders sagged. "You don't understand," he began. "I had no choice. The hardliners needed—" The ship rocked violently, cutting him off. Bishop's wrist computer chirped an alarm, multiple hostile contacts closing fast. "Purity front," Tenzev spat. "We need to move, now." "I'm trusting you," Bishop said. "Don't make me regret it." The airlock cycled open. 3 Purity Front soldiers in jet-black armor poured through. Bishop and Tenzev moved in perfect sync, decades of combat experience evident in every fluid motion. In seconds, the boarding party lay incapacitated. More alarms blared. The ship's integrity was failing. "We need to reach my shuttle," Bishop shouted over the din of tearing metal. They fought their way through the crippled transport, Purity Front fanatics falling before their combined firepower. They were meters from Bishop's docking collar when a stray bolt caught Tenzev in the abdomen. The old soldier stumbled, blood blossoming across his chest. Bishop caught him, dragging him the final distance to safety. As the airlock sealed behind them, Tenzev's eyes rolled back. "Hold on," Bishop growled, laying Tenzev on the deck. "Don't you dare die on me now." Tenzev's breath came in ragged gasps. "Listen," he wheezed. "What I did, it was to protect us all. There's more at stake than you know. Exile, not what you think." "Go there," Tenzev said, his voice barely a whisper. "The truth. It's all there. Save them. Save us all." Bishop stared at the coordinates, knees going weak. A priority alert from Liara cut through his stupor. He keyed the comm, dread settling in his stomach as her breathless voice filled the cabin. Bishop's fingers flew across the decryption terminal, sweat beading on his brow as he pored over Tenzev's final gift. The coordinates burned in his mind, a siren song of answers amidst the chaos. "We have a heading," he announced, voice tight with urgency. "Elysia, plot a course for the Tartarus Rift." The diplomat's eyes widened. "That's uncharted space, Bishop. Are you certain?" He nodded grimly. "It's our only lead on exile. We go now." The next minutes were a blur of plasma fire and close-quarters combat. Bishop's team carved a bloody path through the station's corridors, the scavengers more numerous and better armed than expected. "I've located the data core." Thrace's voice crackled over the comm. "Securing it now. Wait, something's wrong. It's a trap." Hours later, in the Defiance ready room, Bishop glared at the captive scavenger. "Where did they take her?" Bishop smacked his fist on the table. "What reckoning? What's Exile's endgame?" Elysia's voice cut through Bishop's mounting dread. "Bishop, I've finished analyzing the data core. You need to see this." "A program," Elysia explained, her voice tight. "But it went wrong. Horribly wrong." "We have Exile's identity," Bishop announced to his team. "Now we find his base and end this." "Uploading nanovirus now," she announced. "Brace for impact." "You're too late," the abomination growled. "The virus is already spreading. Earth will burn." Sinclair charged forward, energy blade igniting. "Not if I have anything to say about it." As the two titans clashed, Bishop spotted Thrace across the chamber, frantically working at a console. The battle raged on three fronts: Sinclair dueling Exile, Thrace racing to save Earth, and Bishop holding off waves of reinforcements. The fate of humanity hung in the balance. Balance. Bishop's finger tightened on the trigger, his world narrowing to the next threat, the next shot. He couldn't afford to think beyond this moment, beyond keeping Thrace alive long enough to stop the virus. A deafening roar shook the chamber. Bishop's head snapped towards its source. Sinclair and Exile locked in mortal combat. The energy blade sparked and hissed against Exile's cybernetic armor, neither combatant gaining the upper hand. 30 seconds, Thrace shouted over the din, her fingers flying across the console. A triumphant cry pierced the air. Sinclair's blade found its mark, carving through Exile's chest. The abomination staggered, servos whining as it struggled to remain upright. Exile's eyes flared with rage. "You've won nothing," it snarled, voice distorted by failing systems. "My work, my vision, it lives on." With a final grinding wheeze, the creature that was once Commissioner Corrin collapsed. In the sudden silence, Bishop's chest heaved as he surveyed the carnage. Bodies littered the floor, friend and foe alike. Heavily against the console, an energy blade extinguished, blood seeping from a dozen wounds. "We did it," Thrace breathed, disbelief evident in her voice. "We actually did it." Bishop allowed himself a moment of relief before the reality of their situation set in. "This isn't over," he said grimly. "Exile might be down, but his network is still out there. We need to move fast if we're going to capitalize on this victory." Weeks passed in a blur of activity. Bishop coordinated with Elysia, leveraging the momentum of Exile's defeat to push for stronger human-alien cooperation. Meanwhile, Thrace threw herself into rooting out the remaining Cabal loyalists, her grit bordering on obsession. "We stand at a crossroads," Sinclair's voice rang out, steady despite his still-healing injuries. "The defeat of Exile gives us a unique opportunity to forge a lasting peace, but that peace must be built on justice." The next month saw Bishop's team scouring fallen Purity Front strongholds, piecing together the vast web of corruption. Each new revelation sent shockwaves through galactic society: Minister Avaran, Counselor Vozir, names that had once commanded respect now synonymous with treachery. Her words were cut short by a proximity alarm. Bishop's eyes widened as he saw the incoming fighters. "I'll have to call you back," he said tersely, before throwing the shuttle into a desperate evasive maneuver. "This is Zero Squadron." Thrace's familiar tone was music to Bishop's ears. "Hang tight, old man. We've got your back." As if in answer to his unspoken question, a priority alert flashed across his console. Bishop's blood ran cold as he read the message from Elysia. Bishop's shuttle touched down on the landing pad with a metallic groan. He leapt out, racing towards the smoldering tribunal building. Acrid smoke stung his eyes as he pushed through the chaos of emergency responders and panicked civilians. Alive but critical, medevacs en route. A nearby monitor flickered to life, displaying Alicia's hologram. "Bishop, thank the stars. We need to talk, privately." "With all due respect, Admiral," Alicia's tone was ice. "This concerns matters above your clearance." The two locked eyes in a silent battle of wills. Finally, Stryker turned on his heel. "Fine, you've got 5 minutes." As soon as they were alone, Alicia's composure cracked. "It's worse than we thought. The shapeshifter, it's not the only one. Our systems have been compromised at the highest levels." Bishop's mind raced. "How deep does this go?" "Deep enough that we can't trust anyone. Stryker's instituting new security protocols, but—" She hesitated. "I fear the cure may be worse than the disease." "He's doing what he thinks is necessary," Bishop countered, but the words rang hollow even to his own ears. Sinclair's eyes blazed. "Necessary? He's playing right into their hands. Can't you see?" A squad of Zero Squadron troops rounded the corner, led by Zara. Her gaze locked onto Sinclair. "There he is! Traitor!" Bishop's hand flew to his sidearm. "Stand down, soldier. What's the meaning of this?" Zara's lip curled. "We have evidence linking the prefect to primacy sympathizers. He's under arrest." Sinclair's face drained of color. "This is madness. Bishop, you know me." For a heartbeat, Bishop hesitated. Then his combat instincts took over. In one fluid motion, he drew his weapon and fired, not at Sinclair, but at the corridor's environmental controls. Steam erupted, flooding the hallway. "Run!" Bishop shouted, shoving Sinclair towards the nearest exit. "I had a feeling you'd need an exit strategy," she said, ushering them inside. "Now let's go, before—" Bishop's calm crackled, Stryker's voice incandescent with rage. "You're making a big mistake, son. Stand down now, or I'll—" Alicia cut the transmission. "No time. We need to decide. Are we with Sinclair or not?" As their shuttle lifted off, plasma bolts from Zero Squadron fighters streaked past. The Independence's point defense systems roared to life, providing cover fire. Bishop gripped his seat, knowing that with each passing second, the dream of a united humanity slipped further away. Aboard the Independence, Sinclair addressed his loyalist. "I won't lie to you. The road ahead is treacherous. But we cannot allow fear to dictate our actions. We must stand for justice, for due process, for the very ideals that brought us together." "Multiple primacy signatures detected," Alicia repeated, her voice taut. "They're mobilizing across all sectors." Sinclair's face hardened. "We need to end this civil war. Now!" But even as Sinclair's resistance gained momentum, Admiral Stryker's grip on human territories tightened like a vice. Reports flooded in of a new terror sweeping through coalition space, the Order Obsidian. "Another massacre on Hellion," Alicia reported, her voice hollow. "An entire sector. Just gone." Minutes later, they huddled around a holo projector, watching footage smuggled out by the defecting pilot. Bodies in the streets. Obsidian interrogators, their black armor gleaming as they dragged screaming civilians into unmarked shuttles. Seizing the moment, Sinclair broadcast an appeal across all frequencies. "Adrian," he addressed Stryker directly, "enough blood has been spilled. Meet with me, face to face. We can still salvage something from this nightmare." As the Independence approached the designated rendezvous point, Bishop couldn't shake a gnawing sense of unease. "It's too easy," he muttered to Alicia. "Stryker doesn't give in, not like this." The deck lurched beneath their feet. Alarms blared. Pandemonium erupted as figures seemed to melt out of the shadows. Obsidian infiltrators, their true forms revealed. "Vertulian shapeshifters!" Bishop shouted, drawing his sidearm. Through the melee, he caught glimpses of Sinclair, back-to-back with Thrace, fighting like demons. But they were being pushed back, overwhelmed by the sheer number of attackers. A scream cut through the din. Bishop's blood ran cold as he saw Alicia, struggling in the iron grip of a towering figure. Even without the black armor, He'd recognize that cruel smile anywhere. "Voit!" Bishop snarled, leveling his weapon. The Grand Inquisitor's grin widened as he pressed a blade to Elysia's throat. Ah, he chided. "I wouldn't if I were you." His voice boomed out, amplified to reach every corner of the ship. "Sinclair, your war ends now. Surrender yourself, or watch as I peel the skin from your alien whore, inch by excruciating inch." "You have 1 hour," Voight continued, his eyes gleaming with sadistic glee. "Choose wisely." "We can't give in to that monster," he growled, pacing the ravaged command deck. As if in answer, a faint beep emanated from Alicia's discarded datapad. Bishop snatched it up, decoding the hidden message with practiced ease. His eyes widened. Thrace leaned in, studying the display. The Hadrian Drift? Who could she possibly be contacting out there? Before anyone could speculate further, alarms blared. Zero Squadron pilot Varys burst onto the bridge, his face a mask of concern. "Sir, we've detected..." In a blur of motion, Varys produced a hidden blade. Thrace barely had time to register the betrayal before the weapon slammed into her midsection. She crumpled, gasping. "Primacy, scum!" Bishop roared, drawing his sidearm. But Varys was already retreating, sealing blast doors behind him. A scream of agony, Alicia's voice, unmistakable, cut through the air, followed by the dull thud of a body hitting the deck. Sinclair's face hardened. "We're getting off this ship, now!" They fought their way to the escape pods, dragging the wounded Thrace between them. A handful of loyalists joined their desperate flight. As their pod rocketed away from Independence, Bishop's comm crackled. A new set of coordinates flashed on the display, deeper into the drift. "She's still alive," he muttered, "and leading us somewhere." Hours later, their battered group stumbled into an abandoned research outpost. The air was thick with dust and disuse. Suddenly the shadows shifted. Armed figures materialized, surrounding them. A familiar voice rang out. Well, what have we here?" Liara stepped into view, flanked by a motley crew of hardened fighters. Relief washed over Sinclair's face, quickly replaced by urgency. "Elysia," he began, "we need to..." "I know," Liara cut him off, "but we're outgunned and outmaneuvered. We need to regroup, gather allies." Thrace struggled to her feet, fury etched across her features. "Every second we waste, more innocents die." Tempers flared as they argued strategy, precious minutes ticking away. Finally, Liara's cooler head prevailed. They would seek reinforcements first. But as they prepared to move out, a new threat emerged. Jonas Baylor, the mercenary leader Liara had recruited, turned his weapon on them. Ships descended, disgorging armed soldiers. Their leader strode forward, removing her helmet to reveal a face Bishop hadn't seen in years. "Novak?" he breathed, disbelief evident in his voice. "You have a choice to make," Novak declared. "Kneel to us now or die for your failed vision of unity." Bishop's hand inched towards his weapon, mind racing for a way out of this impossible situation. Bishop's finger tightened on the trigger, his eyes locked on Novak's cold gaze. The silence stretched, broken only by the soft whine of energy weapons primed to fire. Sinclair stepped forward, hands raised. "Alana, please. This isn't you. Remember our talks on Centauri Prime, the vision we shared?" Novak's lips curled in a sneer. "Your vision was a lie, Sinclair. Humanity's unity was built on the bones of 1,000 alien worlds." "You're wrong," Sinclair insisted. "We can still..." "We're outnumbered," Liara shouted over the din. "We need..." Her words were cut off by a deafening explosion. The far wall of the outpost disintegrated in a cloud of debris. Through the settling dust strode Jonas Baylor, flanked by a squad of heavily armed fighters. "Cavalry's here," he drawled, laying down suppressing fire. "Let's move." They fought their way out of the outpost, Novak's troops in disarray. As they reached their waiting transport, Bishop saw Novak stagger to her feet, blood trickling from a gash on her forehead. "Enough!" Liara's voice cracked like a whip. "We don't have time for this. I've decrypted files from Novak's datapad. The situation is worse than we thought." The holo display flickered, revealing schematics of horrific bioweapons. Thrace leaned in, her eyes narrowing. Primacy tech, but these yields, they could wipe out entire systems. Liara nodded grimly. The Separatists are just pawns. The real threat is the primacy. They're using this chaos to develop weapons capable of genocide on an unimaginable scale. Sinclair's face hardened. Then we have no choice. We need to take out their research facility. She tapped a series of commands into her communicator. A familiar face materialized on the holo display. Admiral Stryker, Elysia began, we need to talk. Stryker's eyes narrowed, but he listened as Elysia laid out the situation. Finally, he spoke. I still consider you traitors, but this changes everything. I'm dispatching Venka's fleet to your coordinates. You'll have our full support for this operation. Sinclair nodded, his expression grim. It's the only way to stop this madness. But make no mistake, we're walking into hell itself. The tactical display zoomed in on a desolate region of space, the Karen Quarantine Zone. Within its depths lay their target, and perhaps humanity's last hope for survival. The Karen Quarantine Zone loomed before them, a vast expanse of dead space that promised only danger. Sinclair's fists tight as he surveyed the assembled strike force, a motley crew of Zero Squad pilots, his own loyalists, and Venka's alien support craft. Final systems check, he ordered, his voice tight. We breach in 60 seconds. As the team readied themselves, Bishop caught Thrace's eye. The Zero Squad leader nodded grimly, her hand resting on the hilt of her plasma blade. Evasive maneuvers, Venka bellowed over the comm. Push through! Their formations scattered, diving and weaving through the hail of fire. Bishop's hands flew over the controls, his craft spiraling to avoid a barrage of missiles. Through the view screen, he caught glimpses of the battle unfolding. Zero Squad fighters dancing deadly pirouettes around the drones, alien support craft unleashing salvos of return fire. A nearby explosion rocked his ship. Bishop's stomach lurched as he saw one of Liara's transports erupting into a fireball, debris scattering into the void. We're taking heavy losses, Liara's voice crackled over the comm. We need to... Negative, Sinclair's voice was steel. Primary objective remains. Push to the insertion point. Their ship screamed towards the surface, dodging and weaving. Bishop gritted his teeth as G-forces slammed him back into his seat. The ground rushed up to meet them. Impact. His craft skidded across the rocky terrain, screeching to a halt. Bishop was moving before the dust settled, weapon drawn as he leapt from the cockpit. All around, the strike force was disgorging from their ships. Plasma fire erupted as primacy cyborg troopers swarmed from defense bunkers. Push forward, Sinclair roared, leading the charge. We need to breach that facility. They fought their way across the blasted landscape, a tide of persistence against the primacy's robotic legions. Bishop's world narrowed to the rhythm of combat. Aim, fire, duck, repeat. Beside him, Thrace was a whirlwind of destruction, her blade carving glowing arcs through the air. Finally, they reached the main entrance. Breaching charges detonated, and they poured into the facility's sterile corridors. Liara, come in, Sinclair barked into his comm. Static answered. We need to find her, Bishop insisted. Sinclair's face was grim. Agreed, but we can't lose focus. Thrace, take your squad and secure the bioweapon stockpiles. Bishop, with me, will find Liara and neutralize the lab. They split up, racing through the twisting passageways. Alarms blared, and the facility shuddered under the impact of Venka's bombardment outside. Rounding a corner, Bishop and Sinclair stumbled upon a scene of carnage. Bodies in obsidian armor lay strewn across the floor, limbs twisted at unnatural angles. They pressed on, following the trail of destruction. Finally, they reached a sealed blast door. Beyond it, muffled sounds of combat echoed. Liara, Sinclair shouted as the ceiling began to collapse. She turned, her eyes meeting theirs for a split second before tons of rubble came crashing down. The last thing Bishop saw was Liara diving for cover in the lower levels as the upper chamber imploded. Silence fell, broken only by the crackle of fires and the groan of stressed metal. Sinclair's hand on his shoulder stopped him. No time. We have to trust she made it. Right now, we need to secure those warheads. Thrace, report! Sinclair barked into his comm. Finally, the last cyborg fell. Thrace stood, breathing heavily. The vault's just ahead. Let's finish this. They approached the massive door, tensed for another ambush. Instead, a chillingly familiar voice rang out. Novak's eyes were dull, unfocused. I'm sorry, Sinclair, she mumbled. I was wrong about everything. What have you done to her? Sinclair snarled. Voight chuckled. Merely opened her eyes to the truth. But that's not important now. What matters is the choice before you. His eyes glittered with malice. You see, while you've been busy here, my agents have been quite industrious. Similar bioweapons are already in place at every major human colony. One word from me, and billions die. He spread his hands. So, what will it be, Sinclair? Surrender now, or condemn your entire species to extinction? Don't do it, Thrace shouted. In a blur of motion, she lunged for Voight, her blade flashing. The room exploded into chaos. Plasma bolts filled the air as obsidians and rebels clashed. Bishop dove for cover, returning fire. Attention all combatants. This is Admiral Stryker. You are surrounded and outgunned. Surrender now or be obliterated. Voight's face contorted with rage. You fool, he spat at Sinclair. You've doomed us all. As if in answer, a series of explosions rippled through the facility. The bioweapons vault groaned ominously. The facility shuddered again. Whatever happened next, Bishop knew, would determine the fate of humanity itself. Incoming! Thrace shouted, diving for cover as a stray round nearly took her head off. The two men collided, Voight's shot going wide. They grappled fiercely, crashing into consoles and upending equipment. Sinclair fought with a fervor Bishop had never seen, landing vicious blows that drove Voight back. You're outmatched, fool, Voight sneered, wiping blood from his split lip. As always. Sinclair struggled to his feet, his breath ragged. Maybe, but I don't need to beat you. I just need to stop you. He lunged again, catching Voight off guard. This time his fist connected solidly with the Inquisitor's jaw. There was a sickening crack, and Voight staggered back, genuine shock in his eyes. Impossible, he snarled, before turning and fleeing deeper into the facility. Sinclair moved to pursue, but Liara's voice stopped him. We've got bigger problems. The core's going critical. The ground beneath them shuddered ominously. Warning klaxons blared as Liara's fingers flew over a console. Voight's triggered the self-destruct. We need to contain this, or the mutagen release will make the primacy's bioweapons look like a common cold. Can we shut it down? Elysia asked, her voice tight with fear. Liara shook her head. No time, but I might have a way to shield the compromised sectors. There's an orbital debris field we can use as an electromagnetic barrier. Do it, Sinclair ordered. As Liara worked feverishly, Bishop saw movement from the corner of his eye. Novak stirred, her eyes clearing. Elysia, she mumbled, confusion etched across her face. Elysia knelt beside her. Alana, listen to me. We need the biohazard override codes. Can you remember them? Novak's brow furrowed. For a heart-stopping moment, Bishop thought she might slip back into her stupor. Then her eyes snapped into focus. Yes, she said, her voice gaining strength. I remember. With Novak's codes, Liara's improvised barrier shimmered to life. The facility groaned as containment fields struggled against the building pressure. It's working, Liara announced, relief evident in her voice. But we need to move, now. They fought their way through the chaos, plasma bolts and debris raining down around them. Bishop's world narrowed to the pounding of his heart and the ragged breath in his lungs as they raced for the landing bay. A primacy shuttle loomed before them, its sleek lines a stark contrast to the destruction all around. They piled in, Thrace taking the controls with practiced ease. We've got company, she called from the cockpit. Looks like we picked up a stowaway. In the cargo hold, they found Voight. The Inquisitor lay crumpled against a bulkhead, blood seeping from a dozen wounds. His cybernetic implants sparked and fizzled, but his eyes still burned with hatred. Before anyone could respond, Voight's body spasmed. His eyes rolled back, and he went still. The Independence loomed before them, a bastion of hope in the void. But as they docked with the massive ship, Bishop couldn't shake the feeling that their greatest challenges still lay ahead. The Independence's cavernous hangar bay swallowed the shuttle, its blast doors sealing shut with a resonant thud. As the group disembarked, the ship's corridors buzzed with hardly restrained panic. Crewmen rushed past, their faces etched with fear and confusion. Sinclair's comm unit crackled to life, a torrent of reports flooding in from across human space. He listened grimly, his face hardened, inning with each new tale of violence and chaos. As if to underscore her words, a priority transmission cut through the air. On screen, a haggard colonial governor appeared, his eyes wild with terror. The transmission dissolved into static. Sinclair smacked his head on the console. "Damn it! We need a countermeasure now!" Liara hesitated, then spoke. "There might be a way, but you're not going to like it." Vale arrived within hours, his augmented eyes gleaming with terrifying excitement. "Fascinating," he murmured, examining the mutagen data. "And you say Voight's augmentations are the key? Marvelous." Sinclair watched the tactical display, his nucleus tightening as he gripped the console. Thrace's vital signs spiked erratically as she fought her way through the primacy stronghold. "Come on," he whispered. "Come on!" But then Thrace's voice crackled through, breathless but triumphant. "Package secured. Karina's here. We're coming home." The lab erupted in cheers as Vale synthesized the counteragent. Within hours, the first batches were en route to besieged worlds. Reports trickled in, pockets of resistance holding out, populations spared from the mutagen's ravages. It wasn't enough, not nearly, but it was a start. In the command center, Elysia paced, her mind racing. "We need to end this," she said finally. "Not just survive, but find a way to stop the bloodshed." She outlined her plan, a summit on Edeon, neutral ground where moderates and hardliners alike could forge a new path forward. It was audacious, perhaps even foolhardy. But as Sinclair looked at the faces around him, human and alien, soldier and scientist, he knew it was their best hope. "Make it happen," he ordered. As preparations for Edeon began, none of them could have known the forces already aligning against them. In shadowed corridors and hidden bases, Stryker, Voight, and Torga each set their own plans in motion. "ETA to Edeon, 3 hours, Thrace reported, her voice tight with tension. Sinclair nodded, then turned to Elysia. "Status on the diplomatic contingent?" "Breach detected in outer perimeter." Liara's voice crackled over the comm. "Unknown?" Her words cut off in a deafening explosion. Alarms wailed as damage reports flooded in. "Liara!" Sinclair shouted. "Status!" "Bad," Liara gasped. "But I'll live. Focus on the mission." With Stryker's forces neutralized, the Independence limped towards Edeon. As they entered orbit, Elysia's communicator chirped. She listened intently, her expression grim. Sinclair nodded. "Let's hope it holds." Their hopes were shattered as alarms blared once more. On the main view screen, horrific images flickered to life. Edeon's surface writhing as a nanovirus swept across the planet. "It's Voight," Sinclair snarled. "He's using some new mutagenic weapon." Vale's voice cut in, breathless with urgency. "The entire planetary biosphere is being transformed. Edeon is becoming a death world." "Can we stop it?" Elysia demanded. "Not from here," Vale replied. "Novak and I are working on countermeasures, but we need time." Sinclair's mind focused. "Time we don't have. We're transferring the summit to Independence. Prepare for immediate evacuation of all delegates." As shuttles ferried the panicked diplomats aboard, long-range sensors picked up a new threat. "Targa," Liara reported, her voice weak but determined. "She's excavated something, a bioweapon of unimaginable power." "The world render," Elysia breathed, her eyes wide with horror. "If she deploys that—" "Did you really think you could hide from me?" Targa's malevolent laughter filled the bridge. "Your pitiful peace dies here." Separatist ships swarmed from the nebula's swirling gases, their weapons already blazing. The Independence rocked under the barrage as boarding pods slammed into its hull. "All hands, repel boarders," Sinclair roared. "Engineering, get us out of here." But in the engine room, Chief Engineer Daria's face twisted in a cruel smile. Her fingers danced across the controls, and the mighty engines of the Independence fell silent. Space. Chaos reigned as Targa's forces swarmed through the Independence's corridors. Sinclair gritted his teeth, his mind racing. "Elysia, get the diplomats to the escape pods. We need to salvage what we can of this mission." Before she could answer, an explosion rocked the ship. Smoke billowed from the engineering section. Sinclair's comm crackled to life. Chief Engineer Daria's voice filled with static. "Sir, we've been sabotaged. Engines are completely fried." "Damn it!" Sinclair pounded his fist on the console. "Everyone to the emergency shuttles, now!" They fled through corridors choked with smoke and echoing with weapons fire. Torga's boarding parties closed in from all sides. As they reached the shuttle bay, Sinclair saw Thrace dragging an injured Zero Squad member. "Go!" she shouted. "I'll hold them off!" Sinclair hesitated for a split second, then nodded grimly. He piled into the last shuttle with Elysia, Liara, and a handful of survivors. As they rocketed away from the dying Independence, Sinclair watched Taurga's ships tear the once proud vessel apart. Days later, their battered shuttle limped into orbit around an uncharted world on the galactic fringe. Its surface was a patchwork of harsh deserts and tangled jungles. Hardly ideal, but it would have to do. As they established a makeshift base, Elysia took charge. Her diplomatic skills proved invaluable in maintaining order among the shell-shock survivors. Dr. Vale worked tirelessly, synthesizing treatments for those exposed to mutagens during their escape. Novak arrived a week later, her own shuttle barely holding together. She brought a cadre of defectors, separatist scientists who'd seen the horror of Targa's plans and chosen to switch sides. "We want to help," Novak said, her eyes haunted. "To make this right." Elysia nodded. "We need all the help we can get." As the days stretched into weeks, their situation grew increasingly desperate. Supplies dwindled, and the constant fear of discovery gnawed at them all. Liara spent every waking moment scouring intercepted primacy data, searching for any advantage. She laid out the nightmare before them. Targa's mobile battle station, a dreadnought overflowing with weapons, housed a bioforge capable of unleashing self-replicating extinction-level pathogens. The Separatist leader had raided top-secret xenogen labs across multiple worlds, amassing a terrifying arsenal. Sinclair's fist tight. "We need to stop this, now!" Zero Squad volunteered for a high-risk operation to infiltrate Stryker's flagship, the Liberty's Bane. Their mission, capture their former leader and destabilize support for Targa. But when Zara's team breached the Liberty's hull, they found a nightmare waiting. The ship's corridors crawled with mutated headhunters, twisted beyond recognition by Targa's viral creations. The transmission devolved into screams and weapons fire. When it cleared, Zara's voice was thick with grief. "Drake's gone. He killed half the squad before escaping. We have to abort." Elysia's face went ashen as she realized Targa's plan. "She's going to use Vector Prime as ground zero for the render. Once it takes hold there..." With no other choice, they prepared for a desperate mission. Elysia reached out through neutral channels, negotiating emergency passage to Vector Prime. It was a long shot, but their only hope of stopping Targa before she unleashed Apocalypse. But Jonas's help came at a terrible price. As their small fleet approached the rendezvous point, they found themselves caught in a brutal ambush. Jonas's marauder band struck without warning, their weapons blazing. "Traitor!" Novak screamed over the comms. "You sold us out!" Jonas's cold laughter filled the channel. "Nothing personal, love. Targa offered a better deal. Immunity from the virus in exchange for Elysia and her little resistance." Before anyone could stop her, Xyla's ship accelerated to ramming speed. The resulting explosion tore through Jonas's formation, creating a gap in their lines. Elysia, Sinclair, and a handful of others piled into Jonas's captured shuttle. As they rocketed away from the chaos of battle, Elysia's eyes were fixed on the monitor. Vector Prime loomed before them, a world of azure oceans and emerald continents. The shuttle touched down in a secluded clearing, its cloaking field shimmering as it deactivated. Elysia's team moved swiftly, securing the perimeter as scouts fanned out into the alien wilderness. Hours later, a breathless scout returned. "We've found Torga's forward base," he gasped. "But there's a problem." His words were cut short by a high-pitched whine. A volley of plasma bolts tore through the foliage, incinerating trees and scorching the earth. From the undergrowth emerged armored figures, their helmets adorned with blood-red visors. At their head strode a towering figure, his armor festooned with gruesome trophies. "Scorn!" Elysia hissed, recognizing the infamous bounty hunter. Above, sleek drones buzzed through the canopy, their sensors scanning for heat signatures. Thrace pulled Novak into a hollow beneath a massive tree root, barely avoiding detection. "We can't stay here," Novak whispered. "Those hunter-killers will find us eventually." They pushed deeper into Vector Prime's wilderness, the landscape growing stranger with each step. Bioluminescent fungi cast an eerie glow over twisted rock formations. In the distance, something massive and serpentine slithered through the undergrowth. As night fell, they stumbled upon a hidden grotto. Within its depths stood figures swathed in living, pulsating robes. Their eyes glowed with an inner light as they turned to face the intruders. One of the alien mystics stepped forward, its voice resonating directly in their minds. "We have foreseen your coming. The threat of the world render looms large." Thrace tensed, ready for a fight, but Novak raised a hand. "We need your help," she pleaded. "Billions will die if we can't stop Torga." The Victa conferred silently, their robes writhing with unspoken communication. Finally, the leader turned back to them. "We will guide you to the heart of the enemy's stronghold, but first, you must be prepared." Novak stepped forward, her eyes blazing with purpose. "Whatever it takes." Meanwhile, Elysia's team regrouped, studying holomaps of Torga's ground base. Sinclair outlined a daring air assault plan, while Liara prepared for a simultaneous cyber warfare strike. "We'll only get one shot at this," Elysia warned. "Make it count." Dropships screamed across the sky, unleashing a barrage of fire on Torga's defenses. As chaos erupted on the ground, Liara's fingers flew across her console, bypassing firewalls and rerouting command protocols. "I'm in," she shouted. "Render launch coordinates diverted to quarantine zone." The two forces clashed in brutal hand-to-hand combat. Elysia ducked under a swipe from a primacy shock trooper, driving her vibroblade into a gap in his armor. Nearby, Sinclair grappled with a hulking brute, their augmented strength evenly matched. Torga waded through the melee, her enhanced limbs tearing through resistance fighters with terrifying ease. She reached the command center, seizing the final launch key. "At last," she snarled, "the galaxy will burn." A blinding flash of light erupted from the far side of the battlefield. When it faded, Novak stood transformed. Her body crackled with mutagenic energy, her eyes blazing with newfound power. "This ends now," Novak growled, her voice distorted and alien. The sky above erupted in a cacophony of light and sound as Torga's orbiting dreadnought shuddered. The render cycle activated, but instead of spreading outward, it turned inward. The massive vessel twisted and writhed, consumed by its own apocalyptic creation. On the ground, Torga screamed in agony as her body contorted. Her cybernetic enhancements fused with mutating flesh, creating a horrific amalgamation that collapsed in on itself. In moments, nothing remained but a smoldering crater. As the dust settled, Elysia surveyed the devastation. The immediate threat had been neutralized, but the cost had been high. She turned to Liara, her expression grim. "How long until Stryker's mutant armies reach the core worlds?" Liara's face was etched with exhaustion. "Days, maybe hours. We need to move fast." Elysia surveyed the aftermath of Vector Prime, her heart made with grit. "Liara, what's our timeline?" Sinclair stepped forward, his armor scorched and dented. "We can't fight a war on that many fronts, not with our current forces." A flicker of hope crossed Elysia's face. "Then we change the game." She turned to Dr. Vale. "Your research into gene-coded viral munitions, how close are we?" The scientist's eyes widened. We have a working prototype, but field testing... We're out of time for testing, Elysia cut him off. Get your team ready. We're going to hit Stryker where it hurts. Within hours, Zero Squad operatives were dispatched across human space. Marcus Atticus crouched in the shadows of a ruined hab block, watching a group of Stryker's mutated shock troops lumber past. Their twisted forms made his stomach churn. Atticus activated the device. A fine mist sprayed into the air, invisible and odorless. For a moment, nothing happened. Then one of the mutants stumbled, clutching its head. Another fell to its knees, its body convulsing. Before Atticus's eyes, the monstrous features began to recede. Scales sloughed off, revealing human skin beneath. Elongated limbs contracted to normal proportions. On his command ship, Stryker raged at the tactical displays. "How is this possible?" he roared. "We need more mutagens. Contact Jonas. Tell him to empty his stocks." As Stryker howled threats, Elysia's intelligence team intercepted the transmission. Liara's eyes widened as she decoded Jonas's true intentions. "He's planning to auction off a primacy bioforge," she reported. "With that, anyone could recreate the world render virus." "Push to the central hub," Liara shouted over the comm. "We need that data core." Marcus Atticus plowed through a trio of cyborg defenders, his armor's servos straining under the effort. "On it," he grunted, shouldering open a blast door. Inside, Jonas stood before a pulsing alien device, the bioforge. The mercenary captain's cybernetic eye glowed malevolently as he raised his weapon. "You're too late," he snarled. Atticus didn't hesitate. He charged forward, taking a plasma bolt to the chest that seared through his armor. But the momentum carried him into Jonas, sending them both crashing into the forge's control panel. "We're out of time," Liara shouted. "Fall back to the shuttles." Atticus delivered a final blow to Jonas's skull, leaving the mercenary captain unconscious. He staggered to his feet, following Liara as they fled the doomed station. Their shuttle barely cleared the blast radius as Jonas's base erupted in a fiery explosion. Liara clutched the data core to her chest, her face pale but determined. "We got it," she breathed. "Everything we need to counter Stryker's mutagens." As chaos engulfed their last refuge, Novak and her science team worked feverishly. The stolen forge data unlocked new avenues of research, allowing them to synthesize a GCVM superpathogen of unprecedented potency. "It's ready," Novak announced, her eyes ringed with exhaustion. "But we'll need to disperse it on a massive scale." Elysia nodded grimly. "We'll use the primacy carrier we captured. Load everything we've got. We're making our last stand." "Now," Elysia commanded. The bombs detonated, releasing a cloud of microscopic agents into the atmosphere. For a moment, the universe seemed to hold its breath. Then, like a wave spreading across the galaxy, reports began to pour in. Stryker's mutant armies were collapsing, their corrupted DNA unraveling faster than it could be replenished. The hyper-evolution of Novak's creation outpaced even the most advanced primacy biotech. Liara nodded, her tactical display already highlighting pockets of remaining headhunter resistance. "Where do we start?" Elysia's eyes hardened with dedication. "We start by taking back our homes, one world at a time." Months passed as humanity regrouped. The Interstellar Federation of Free Worlds took shape, a new banner uniting the scattered human colonies. Elysia stood at its helm, her days filled with diplomatic negotiations and strategic planning. "Status report," he barked. Liara's fingers danced across her hollow interface. "Primacy holdouts continue to resist in the Orion Arm, but their numbers are dwindling. Our intelligence suggests they're regrouping near the Cygnus X1 black hole." "Minimal," Vale assured her. "Enhanced strength, accelerated healing, improved cognitive function, all without compromising genetic diversity." But not everyone shared Vale's enthusiasm. In the cramped confines of a retrofitted cargo bay, Corporal Heth addressed a growing crowd of dissenters. "They call it uplifting," he spat, his voice filled with disgust. "But it's nothing more than genetic tyranny. Who are they to decide our evolutionary path?" Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembled throng. Heth's words tapped into a deep well of fear and resentment. Meanwhile, in a secure lab buried deep within the Federation's capital ship, Novak pored over the data recovered from Voight's hidden vaults. Her eyes widened as she deciphered the ancient text. "My God," she whispered. "It was all planned from the beginning." Novak's hands shook as she composed a priority message to Elysia. The revelation would shake the very foundations of human society. Liara's voice was tight with barely controlled panic. "Massive bioweapon strike detected on Earth. It's like nothing we've ever seen before." The main view screen flickered to life, showing horrific scenes of devastation. A writhing mass of alien flesh consumed entire cities, transforming the human homeworld into an unrecognizable nightmare landscape. Thrace's eyes hardened. "The purge strain," he growled, "just like in the ancient protocols." Elysia's mind raced. Humanity now teetered on the brink of extinction, caught between multiple threats. The remnants of the primacy, the enigmatic cryptids, and now this world-ending bioweapon. She turned to her assembled advisors, her voice steady despite the chaos unfolding around them. "We have two priorities. First, we need to contain this attack on Earth. Second, we must uncover the truth behind the cryptids and their agenda." Liara's fingers flew across her console. Preliminary scans indicate less than 8% of the population remains uninfected, and that number is dropping rapidly. Admiral Thrace's mind focused. "We can't save them all, not with what we have." Dr. Vale worked tirelessly, his team administering genetic treatments to evacuees in transit. "The eugenic process is stabilizing," he reported, dark circles under his eyes betraying his exhaustion. "We're seeing unprecedented rates of adaptation and enhancement." But not everyone embraced Vale's vision. In the crowded holds of evacuation ships, tensions simmered between those who accepted the treatments and those who refused. "You're throwing away what makes us human," a man shouted, his face contorted with anger as he confronted a group of newly enhanced evacuees. Before the argument could escalate further, alarms blared. The ship shuddered as weapons fire impacted its shields. "Cryptid loyalists," the captain's voice crackled over the comm. "All hands, prepare for combat." The battle was swift and brutal. Enhanced security teams, their bodies already showing signs of transformation, repelled the attackers with terrifying efficiency. But the cost was high. Dozens of evacuees lay dead or wounded in the aftermath. On Haven Prime, the largest of the new colony worlds, Elysia addressed the newly formed Federation Council. "We've lost Earth," she said, her voice heavy with the weight of command. "But humanity will endure. We must—" A deafening explosion rocked the chamber. Through the smoke and chaos, a figure strode forward. Selden, his eyes gleaming with fanatic intensity, raised a weapon. "The weak have led us to ruin," he roared. "It's time for the strong to take control." Gunfire erupted as Selden's followers swarmed the chamber. Elysia ducked behind an overturned table, her mind racing. This was no mere uprising. It was the beginning of civil war. Across Haven Prime, similar scenes played out. Eugenic extremists, rallying behind Selden's banner of ultimate human supremacy, seized key installations. Those who resisted were brutally cut down. In orbit, Admiral Thrace directed Federation forces in a desperate holding action. But as he coordinated the defense, a piercing pain lanced through his chest. He stumbled, clutching at his uniform now stained with spreading crimson. "Assassin!" someone shouted. Chaos engulfed the bridge as security teams scrambled to respond. Liara fought her way to Thrace's side, applying pressure to the wound. "Stay with me, Admiral," she urged. As news of Thrace's death spread, Selden's forces redoubled their assault. Haven Prime teetered on the brink of total collapse. "It can't be," she muttered. "But if this is true—" Novak quickly encrypted her findings, transmitting them to Elysia's emergency channel. As the sound of gunfire drew closer, she steeled herself for what was to come. Outside, the skies above Haven Prime burned. The opening salvos of humanity's new civil war illuminated the night, a grim harbinger of the battles yet to come. Novak's fingers flew across the haptic interface, encrypting her findings as alarms blared throughout the bunker. The sound of gunfire drew closer, punctuated by the screams of the dying. She hit the transmit button just as the reinforced door buckled under a barrage of plasma fire. "The age of weakness is over," he declared. "Embrace evolution or perish." In orbit, the remnants of the Federation fleet regrouped. Admiral Chisholm, his face grim beneath a shock of white hair, addressed the assembled captains via holographic projection. On the bridge of the lead destroyer, Liara studied the tactical displays. "Sir, we're detecting unusual energy signatures near the abandoned Selden's forces are converging on that location." As the fleet descended, the skies above Haven Prime erupted in a storm of anti-aircraft fire. Fighters screamed past, locked in deadly dogfights. On the ground, Federation Marines deployed in drop pods, hitting Selden's defensive lines with pinpoint precision. "I am Zinara," the alien announced, "emissary of the Cadron. We have much to discuss and little time." Half a galaxy away, on the reclusive world of Skira, Novak and Liara crouched behind a twisted spire of living crystal. The air hummed with energy, setting their teeth on edge. Ahead, a vast structure pulsed with an otherworldly glow. Liara nodded, her enhanced senses scanning for threats. "Let's move. We need those codes before—" On Haven Prime, the battle raged. Chisholm's forces pushed towards the Xenolithic ruins, but Selden's Engenic warriors proved formidable opponents. Augmented strength and reflexes made them lethal in close combat, while their enhanced minds allowed for complex tactical maneuvers. In the heart of the ruins, Selden stood before a pulsing obelisk of alien design. His eyes gleamed with fanatical intensity as he manipulated holographic controls. "Soon," he muttered, "soon we will purge the weak and ascend to our true potential." A Federation gunship strafed the area, its weapons fire chewing through Selden's defensive perimeter. He snarled in frustration, redoubling his efforts to activate the Omega Protocol. Back on Skira, Novak and Liara fought their way deeper into the cryptid archive. Ancient knowledge surrounded them, glimpses of cosmic wonders and terrors beyond human comprehension. But there was no time to marvel. They had to find the Omega countermeasures before it was too late. As they reached the central chamber, a familiar figure stepped from the shadows. Zinara's alien features twisted into a cruel smile. "I must thank you for leading us here," she purred. "Now hand over the codes. It's time for humanity to fulfill its true purpose." Novak's mind raced. The fate of their species hung in the balance, and the choice before them was impossible. Give Zinara the codes and doom humanity to enslavement, or destroy them and leave Selden's finger on the trigger of extinction. Time was running out. Novak's finger hovered over the delete key, her eyes locked with Zinara's alien gaze. The archive's crystalline walls pulsed with an otherworldly glow, casting eerie shadows across the chamber. "Never!" Novak spat, her voice raw with defiance. Zinara's features twisted into a snarl. "Then you doom your entire species." A thunderous explosion rocked the chamber. Through the billowing smoke, figures in iridescent armor stormed inside, their weapons trained on Zinara's forces. The newcomer's leader, a towering alien with intricate bioluminescent markings, stepped forward. "We cannot allow the Omega Protocol to fall into cryptid hands," he declared, his voice a resonant hum. Zinara's eyes narrowed. "Tolvar, you fool! You have no idea what forces you're meddling with." As the two factions clashed, Novak and Liara retreated deeper into the archive. Alien data streams flickered around them, incomprehensible knowledge dancing at the edges of their perception. Novak's blood ran cold. She had read fragments about those toxins in the Gardner records, a doomsday weapon capable of unraveling the very building blocks of life. On Haven Prime, the situation was equally dire. Admiral Chisholm's voice crackled over the comms, strained and desperate. "We can't hold them back much longer. Selden's forces are breaching the final perimeter." Elijah surveyed the tactical holograms, her face a mask of unbreakable spirit. The Engenic warriors were unstoppable, their augmented bodies shrugging off conventional weapons fire. "We need a new strategy," she declared, her mind racing. "Open a channel to Zinara." Moments later, the alien's face shimmered into view. Alicia steeled herself. "I propose a deal. We'll surrender the biolock data if you can stop Selden from activating the Omega Protocol. Zinara's alien features were unreadable, but there was a long pause before she responded. Agreed. Alarms blared throughout the Remnant's command center. Multiple breaches detected, a technician shouted. It's Drake. He's leading a augment strike team. Elysia's blood ran cold. Drake had been one of their best before his defection to Selden's cause. Now, his cybernetically enhanced body made him a terrifying adversary. On Skira, Novak and Liara huddled in a makeshift bunker, surrounded by loyal Kadran militia. The sounds of battle echoed through the crystalline corridors, Drake's forces, relentless in their assault. They've breached the outer defenses, he gasped. Drake, he's unstoppable! Another blast tore through the chamber. Drake strode through the smoldering hole, his augmented form a nightmarish fusion of flesh and machine. Without hesitation, he raised his arm, now transformed into a lethal energy weapon. The codes, he growled. Now! Tolvar stepped forward, shielding Zinara with his body. You'll have to go through me first, abomination. Drake's cybernetic eye glowed an ominous red. As you wish. Zinara's anguished scream shook the very foundations of the archive. But in that moment of grief, her alien mind made a desperate calculation. Understanding dawned on Novak's face as Zinara placed a hand on her swollen abdomen. You can't mean... It's the only way, Zinara insisted. My child, Tolvar's child, will carry the biogenesis codes within its very DNA. But it was too late. Zinara lay motionless on the ground, her life force spent in that final desperate act. And Novak was gone, along with the hybrid child, humanity's last hope. Across the galaxy on Haven Prime, Selden received the news of Drake's failure. His eyes burned with fanatical intensity as he turned to the pulsing obelisk before him. If I can't have the Omega Protocol, he snarled, then no one will. The xenolithic ruin hummed to life, revealing a weapon of terrifying power, the Soul Worm device. Capable of sterilizing entire star systems, it was the ultimate expression of Selden's vision of genetic purity. As Selden's finger hovered over the activation switch, a premonition of utter annihilation flashed through Drake's cybernetic mind. In that moment, everything changed. Deep in the rings of Saturn, Drake's ship pivoted, weapons trained on his former augment allies. His voice crackled over the comms, filled with newfound purpose. This ends now, he declared. For the sake of our species, all species, Selden must be stopped. The battle raged around the gas giant, a desperate struggle for humanity's very existence. And somewhere in the vast expanse of space, a child grew, carrying within its hybrid DNA the key to either salvation or extinction. All units converge on Saturn's rings. Drake's voice crackled over secure channels. We extract the hybrid child now. Drake's renegade flotilla burst from stealth, energy weapons blazing. Augment ships disintegrated under the barrage, but more swarmed in to take their place. On the Enclave's main deck, Drake's boots clanged against the metal floor as he sprinted towards the medical bay. Status on the child? He demanded, his cybernetic eyes scanning for threats. A haggard medic met him at the airlock. Stable, but we need to move. Those augments are... The medic led him to a secured chamber. Inside, nestled within a stasis pod, lay an impossibly small figure, the hybrid infant, its alien features barely discernible. At the geostationary anchor point, Drake interfaced directly with the remnant networks. His consciousness expanded, diving into the digital realm. Selden's soul worm firing codes stretched before him like strands of malevolent DNA. With surgical precision, Drake rewrote them, planting a fatal flaw. Alarms blared as Drake's team boarded the purloined vessel. The hybrid child's stasis pod was secured in a shielded chamber, surrounded by banks of humming DNA sequencers. Navigation decoupled, Elysia reported, her hands flying over holographic controls. We're dark to external networks. We don't have a choice, he explained to the assembled crew. The Kadran sanctuary is our only hope of decrypting the Omega Protocol. Good hunting, Elysia said, clasping Drake's arm. And take care of the child. The its reputation, sensor ghosts plagued their navigation systems. Massive, twisted structures loomed in the darkness, failed mega-projects of long-dead civilizations. Hold formation, Drake ordered as they pushed deeper into forbidden space. We're almost... Drake's fists clenched. How many more would die before this was over? They docked at an abandoned hangar, the air thick with the acrid smell of long-dead systems. Drake cradled the hybrid child stasis pod as they made their way into the sanctuary's depths. Fan out, he ordered. We need to find those data troves. Drake's cybernetic eyes scanned the ruins of the cryptid sanctuary, processing the gravity of their discovery. The hybrid child, nestled in its stasis pod, held more than just the key to undoing Selden's madness. It carried the embryonic form of the Omega Protocol itself. We need to move, Drake ordered, his voice tight. The Meridian Nebula. It's our only shot at decoding this. When they finally breached the nebula's outer reaches, a new horror awaited them. Gargantuan cryptid mutations roamed unchecked, their twisted forms defying description. Massive Cadran biomechs lumbered through the chaos, terraforming entire worlds with alien purpose. There! Liara's voice crackled over the comms. Androm Zeta! A tense moment passed before the response came. Approach vector transmitted. Any deviation will result in immediate termination. The landing was rough, their ships battered from the arduous journey. As Drake emerged, cradling the stasis pod, he found himself surrounded by the descendants of Cadran archivists, their features a blend of alien and disturbingly familiar. Novak stepped forward, his scientific mind already racing. We need access to your genomic databases. The fate of multiple species hangs in the balance. The Zetan leader, a being of indeterminate gender, studied them with cold calculation. And what do you offer in return? Before Drake could respond, alarms blared throughout the complex. A Zetan technician's eyes widened in panic. Massive energy signatures detected. It's a Cadran warfleet. This is High Archon Zixtal, a voice boomed. Surrender the human child, or we will reduce this planet to cosmic dust. Drake's team exchanged horrified glances. How had Selden's Cadran allies tracked them here? The Zetan leader turned to Drake, eyes narrowing. You brought this upon us. What will you do to save us all? He looked down at the sleeping hybrid child, feeling the weight of entire civilizations on his shoulders. Time was running out, and the next decision would shape the fate of all species for millennia to come. We protect the child, Drake declared, his voice cutting through the tension. At all costs. Drake's reflexes kicked into overdrive. His arm morphed into a particle cannon, unleashing a devastating barrage. The first wave of mutineers disintegrated, their nanite-infused remains scattering across the Gene Forge's polished floor. She nodded, her own augmentations flaring to life as she sprinted towards the medical bay. A Veil loyalist blocked her path, cybernetic blades extending from his forearms. Liara didn't hesitate. She dropped low, sweeping the attacker's legs and driving an energy blade through his chest in one fluid motion. The air filled with acrid smoke and the scent of ozone as Drake systematically eliminated the mutineers. His cybernetic eye identified weak points in their augmented armor, each shot finding its mark with ruthless efficiency. Just as the last of Xander's forces fell, a thunderous explosion rocked the complex. Selden's augment vanguard had breached Androm Zeta's outer defenses. We're out of time, Novak shouted, her hands flying over the Gene Forge's central console. I can buy us a few minutes, but... Novak's fingers danced across holographic interfaces, initiating a cascade of failsafes. The Gene Forge's central hexadecryption core pulsed with erratic energy as she systematically corrupted its data pathways. Novak's eyes widened in horrified recognition. Drake, you have to know. She's not what she seems. She's a... Vistra struck with inhuman speed. A tendril of writhing biomatter erupted from her arm, impaling Novak through the chest. As Novak's life ebbed away, she locked eyes with Drake one final time. Understanding dawned on Drake as Vistra's form began to shift, her true nature revealing itself. He grabbed Liara's arm, pulling her towards their last remaining ship. Where to now? Liara asked, her voice tight with tension as she piloted them away from the devastation. Drake's cybernetic eyes scanned star charts, searching for their only remaining option. "The primordial gene cradle," he replied. "It's our last chance." Liara's hands flew across the controls, sending their ship into a wild dive. The void around them exploded with weapons fire as Xander's forces gave chase. Twisted leviathans, products of hyper-evolution, emerged from the nebula's depths to join the fray. "Liara," he said, his voice heavy with the weight of what he was about to do, "I need you to download everything you can from the Zetan databases, every scrap of metagenomics data." She nodded, already interfacing with the ship's systems. "What are you planning?" As Liara worked feverishly to extract the vital data, Drake activated the Ark's long-dormant systems. Ancient stargates hummed to life, tearing holes in the fabric of reality. "Drake," Liara called out, "I've got it, but initiating the download will trigger a cascade. This entire sector of the meridian, it'll be consumed in a genetic supernova." He met her gaze, both of them knowing what had to be done. "Do it," Drake ordered. "I'm sending the child through. It's the only way to keep it safe from Selden and Vistra." Alarms blared as Xander's forces closed in. Drake turned to Liara, his cybernetic eye gleaming with grim drive. Liara hesitated for a moment, then nodded. As she prepared to make the jump to hyperspace, Drake armed every weapon system on their battered ship. He thought of the child, drifting through unknowable realms, carrying the last hope for a reborn universe. The genetic supernova exploded outward, reality warping and twisting as Drake's ship disintegrated around him. His last conscious thought was of Liara, praying she had escaped with the vital data. Liara's vessel shuddered as it tore through the fabric of space-time, alarms blaring warnings of structural integrity failure. Her hands danced across the controls, compensating for gravitational shears that threatened to tear the ship apart. Come on," she muttered, eyes fixed on the navigation display. The Meridian Nebula's metamutagenic cyclones raged behind her, tendrils of chaotic energy lashing out as if trying to drag her back. A final, violent tremor rocked the ship as it burst free of the nebula's grasp. Liara let out a shaky breath, allowing herself a moment of relief before turning her attention to the task at hand. "Computer, begin analysis of Zetan genomic data," she ordered, her voice hoarse. The squadron plunged into uncharted transdimensional rifts, their sensors straining to detect any trace of the ancient Cadran vessel. Space itself seemed to twist and warp around them, reality fragmenting into kaleidoscopic shards. "Contact!" Lieutenant Shrin called out, his tentacles writhing with excitement. "Arc signature detected in the Abrasax realm." Liara's eyes widened. "The galactic fringe? How in the hell did it end up there?" As they approached the nanoverse on the cusp of entropic rebirth, the surviving ships groaned under the increasing gravitational pressures. 2 more vessels imploded, their crews' final screams cut short by the vacuum of space. The Genesis Ark hung suspended in a swirling vortex of primal energies, its gleaming surface untouched by the chaos surrounding it. Liara led the insertion team herself, her suit's integrity field flickering as they crossed the threshold. Inside, they found the stasis pods miraculously intact, but when Liara's trembling fingers brushed the hybrid child's containment unit, her heart sank. The infant's life signs were barely registering, unresponsive to the bioharmonic unlock codes. "It's no use," she whispered, despair threatening to overwhelm her. "We're too late." A violent tremor shook the Ark, sending the team sprawling. The Abrasax realm was destabilizing, reality itself beginning to unravel around them. Suddenly, a shimmering portal materialized within the chamber. Through it stepped a being of otherworldly grace and power, Izari, the rogue Cadran mystic. Her form seemed to flicker between corporeal and ethereal states, biomantric energies crackling around her. Liara met the mystic's gaze, understanding dawning. "You can awaken the hybrid?" Izari nodded solemnly. "Through transcendent spiritual merging, I can catalyze the Omega Protocol's activation, but it will consume my essence entirely." Another tremor rocked the Ark, more violent than before. Liara knew they were out of options. "Do it," she commanded. Izari moved to the stasis pod, her form beginning to dissolve into pure energy. As she merged with the hybrid child, the air crackled with impossible power. Liara and her team shielded their eyes as blinding light erupted from the pod. The Genesis arc hummed to life, ancient systems reactivating. A wave of restorative energy pulsed outward, rippling across subspace pathways. Throughout the cosmos, on worlds ravaged by Selden's atrocities, new life began to bloom from scorched earth. As the light faded, Liara approached the pod with trepidation. Inside, the hybrid child's eyes fluttered open, small particles of Izari's essence still swirling around its tiny form. A deafening roar filled the chamber as a new rift tore open, revealing the battered but still standing form of Drake. His cybernetic enhancements crackled with impossibly strong energy, pushed beyond their limits. "We don't have much time," he growled, limping towards Liara. "The Omega sequence is unfolding. We need to follow it through the multiversal regenerative pathways." Liara nodded, cradling the now awakened hybrid child. Together, they stepped towards the swirling vortex of the Abrasax realm's singularity gateway, the fate of countless realities hanging in the balance. Drake's augmented senses reeled, bombarded by cascading waves of information as they emerged into the heart of the Omega sequence. His cybernetic eyes struggled to process the hyperdimensional geometry swirling around them, each facet containing entire universes in potentia. "By the cryptids," Liara breathed, her voice barely audible over the roar of collapsing realities. Before them stretched a vast hyperbolic tesseract, its crystalline architecture pulsing with raw genetic data. Drake recognized it instantly, the primordial forge that had birthed his universe's very building blocks of life. As they moved deeper into the tesseract's chromatic core, Drake felt his body begin to destabilize. His augmented physiology, once a source of strength, now marked him as an aberration in this realm of pure genetic potential. "Drake!" Izari's voice echoed from everywhere and nowhere, her essence dispersed throughout the structure. "You must confront it, the child that awaits." Liberation, termination, release. The being's thoughts crashed against Drake's consciousness like a tsunami. He saw countless civilizations rise and fall, each extinction only giving birth to greater complexities, trapped in an endless cycle of rebirth and stasis. Anomaly, outlier, hope. Drake understood with horrifying clarity. His augmented genome, the very thing that made him an aberration here, could be the key to breaking the cycle. "I have to do it," Drake growled, his voice strained as reality itself seemed to reject his presence. "Liara, get the child to safety. This ends now." Before Liara could protest, Drake surged forward. He pressed his hand against the quantum flux of the child that was, feeling his neural pathways intertwine with the being's omega matrices. Pain beyond imagination tore through him as he became the anchor point, a singularity preventing the endless reset. The hyperbolic manifold shuddered. Cracks spiderwebbed across the tesseract's surface as the fundamental forces holding it together began to unravel. Drake's body flickered, caught between existence and oblivion as he held the breach open. Liara clutched the hybrid child tightly, shielding it from the maelstrom of unmaking that raged around them. "Drake!" she screamed, but her voice was lost in the cacophony of a dying multiverse. Liara's ship tumbled through the void, battered by waves of unreality as the cosmos itself came undone around her. The hybrid child stirred in its stasis pod, its impossible genetics the last anchor to a fading order of existence.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.